Have any of you ever had an intention that you didn't follow through on? Maybe you said, I'm going to exercise more, eat differently, ride my bike to work instead of driving. I bet if you're like most of us, of course, you've had an intention, a good intention that you really meant, that you didn't actually wind up doing. I'm Dr. John Izzo, author and keynote speaker, and my mission in the world is to have conversations that make the difference. And one of the conversations I think we must have as a society is how do we close the gap between our good intentions and what we actually do? You know, in the movie An Inconvenient Truth, Al Gore is wandering around in an airport and he notices all the high-end stores and all the consumption going on, and he mused to himself kind of forlornly, I just don't see evidence that people actually get it, that they're changing their behavior. And all over the world, when it comes to things like the environment or buying socially responsible products, what we see is a growing consciousness of intentions. Where all over the world people say, I want to decrease my carbon footprint, produce less waste, etc. But there's this gap between what we say we want to do and what we actually wind up doing. Well, I've spent a lot of time thinking about how we can close that gap. And let me share with you 4 things that I think can make us close the gap between what we want to do and the greater good. The first thing is we have to create a path of least resistance for people to do the right thing. Let me give you a perfect example. One of the biggest sources of plastic waste in the world are straws. Unnecessary plastic straws that people use in restaurants, millions of them every single day. And right now, the default option is, the path of least resistance, is you get the straw unless you ask for it. Overnight, we could get people to choose to do the right thing simply by saying, here's a little note on the table. If you want a straw, ask for it. By the way, here's how much plastic you'll save every year if all of you said no. Another simple example, in a hotel, instead of saying to people, if you want your towels to not be changed, put a card on the door. Instead, put a sign that says, if you want your towels to be changed, put a sign on the door. One more simple example, at the copy machine at work, instead of making single-sided the default option, make double-sided, so someone must actually choose to do the wrong thing. Here's a second example. One of the ways we try to change behavior for the greater good is we say these desperate messages that go something like this. You know, people are apathetic and not voting. You need to get out and vote. You know, people are apathetic about the environment. You got to step up and do something about it. Well, as it turns out, the research shows instead of motivating people, this actually makes people more likely to keep doing the wrong thing. Why? Because I've now normalized that doing the wrong thing, being apathetic, not voting, not caring about the environment, is pretty much what everyone else is doing. Let me tell you some fascinating research in hotels. They've actually found in hotels that the rate of people who choose to do the right thing, not have their sheets changed or their towels changed, is very low. So they did an experiment where they put a note on the kitchen, on the sink in the bathroom in the hotel, basically saying this message. 80% of the people who stay in this hotel choose not to change their towels and their sheets every day. Just by putting that message on, it increased the percentage of people who chose to do the right thing by 20%. When they changed it in the experiment to these words, 80% of the people who stay in this room choose not to have their towels and sheets changed every day, it went up another 10%. In other words, instead of telling people, look, the movement isn't happening, you better get with the program, what we have to do is highlight how the movement is already happening and show people how they're being left out by not being in the crowd. Here's the third of 4 things. Most of our messages when we try to get people to change is we talk about all the bad things that are going to happen if we don't change. Boy, the oceans are going to collapse, the environment will be unlivable, the cities will be flooded all over the world because of global warming. Well, it turns out that the research says that when we talk to people about the big things and bad things that are going to happen, they're less likely to take action. If, on the other hand, we talk about the positive things that will happen if we make the change, people are much more likely to make a change. Simple example, we know that heart patients who have a heart attack, if you talk to them that they're going to die if they don't change their behavior, about 85% will not change their behavior. But when they go into a program where they talk about the benefits to them of changing their lifestyle, about 80% will change, not based on the fear of bad things happening, but the desire for good things to happen. One final thing, the fourth point, is that if we want people to choose the right thing to do, we must treat them like adults. You see, what the research says is that people don't get changed, they choose to change. Let me use a simple example. Instead of saying to people, you need to change your diet or else, the research shows that if instead you say to people, doctors, for example, in an examining room, say to people, here's your choices. If you keep on the path you're doing, this is the percentages of what's likely to happen to you. If, on the other hand, you make minor changes in your lifestyle and diet, here's what's likely to happen. If you made major changes and here's what they'd look like, here's what is likely to happen. Now, which would you like to choose? Now imagine for a moment when we're advertising for people to do the greater good, instead of saying do this or else, we said, look, here's 3 scenarios for the future of the world and how you play a part in it. Scenario 1, Scenario 2, Scenario 3. Now, you're an adult. Which of these would you like to choose? What's a step that you're willing to take right now? Now, here's what I want to challenge you to do. I think this is a conversation that really matters, that will make a difference. How can we close the gap between our intentions and what we actually do? I want to challenge you to share this conversation with someone else, to start a conversation about this, and online to share a conversation about how you think we could take this knowledge and change behavior for the greater good.